Hey, I just wanted to start out by saying thank you for listening to Generation Change with Leo Finelli. Ads like this help us produce this podcast. If you'd like to make your own podcast, try Anchor. It's free, it's easy to use, and it allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, computer, or other digital device. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms. Anchor helps you make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership needed. Anchor is everything you need to make a podcast, and it's all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Leo, you ready?
Ready. Hi, I'm Leo Finelli, and you're listening to Generation Change. Today my guest is Ella Fields. Ella is a Los Angeles-based filmmaker, photographer, and YouTube influencer. She has been directing since she was in middle school and has made nearly 30 short films by the age of 17 years old. She has won awards at international film festivals and has been featured in many magazines and news sources. Her film Stereo, about reverse gender stereotypes, has reached nearly 10 million views on YouTube, along with her LGBTQ+ film, Bubblegum, which has reached nearly 3 million views and has won awards in film festivals in various countries. Ella uses her platform to create vivid and uplifting content while speaking up about important topics such as sexual assault, gun control, and LGBTQ+ awareness. In addition to short films, she is into 35mm photography, commercial directing, writing, and other mediums of art. She urges her fellow teenage creatives to document their experiences in any way while creating a platform and supportive environment for them to do so. I talked to her about her work and about why it's important to be telling stories about social justice issues. Please note that this was the very first episode I recorded, so I'm sorry if I sound a little nervous or a lot nervous. Enjoy!
Hi, Leo. What's up? It's so good to see you.
Yes, hi, Ella. Let's get down to the questions. So tell me about, what was your first film like?
So I had been making little things here and there since I was 6 years old, but I consider my first film to be when I was in middle school. So basically the film was about, it was a girl who was having trouble making friends, which is so funny to look back on because I'm realizing that that was me. I was already shadowing my life within my films and I wasn't even realizing it, but that was the first film that I made, yes.
Yeah, I write stuff too, and I feel like I shadow myself in my writing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think about these kinds of things happening to me because at times they sort of have. Has there ever been something that a character that was kind of like you in a movie went through, and then you went through it in real life after you had done a story about it?
So it's interesting because I've always kind of used films to help me make decisions. So I've made films about decisions being made that I had not already made. But within making the film, it helped show me that that's what I needed to do in my life. So for example, this was another one from middle school. It was this film about the character Max from Where the Wild Things Are. And at the time I was having trouble, in my school, I was having trouble making friends and, the whole middle school jazz. It was a difficult time and I wanted to go back to the comfort of a school where I knew I would have friends. So this film, the character, he went to the land of the wild things where he was comfortable and he was king and he was ruling everything. But then he realized that life was boring if it's not a challenge. So then he went back to the place where he was an outcast. So then me writing this film and making this film, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go to the place where I'm comfortable. Maybe I should stick with the challenge. And that decision wound up proving itself to be the right decision. So I guess that would be an example of that. I made the film and then I made the decision.
How has your experience as a queer young woman impacted your general views of bigotry and prejudice?
It's interesting because being a woman and being queer, I see the prejudice because, well, first of all, I feel like it would kind of be a disservice not to. I think it's an important thing to recognize, but also the fact that I am these things, I see it in my own life and, I see it affecting me, but also within that, I see the privilege that I have, especially being white. So it's I recognize the prejudice, I recognize the privilege, And I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of these things are just embedded into our society. And like, I think the first step is to recognize them. But then I think from there, we can pinpoint, like, especially within the media, because that's like my primary focus. Like, I can see like these movies that I watched growing up that I'm like, okay, that is not like how it should be, or like that puts a prejudice onto this group or that group, or like it's just interesting to pinpoint where it comes from, but then within my own art.
Is there a movie that you just too painful to watch because of the way it represents a certain group?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Disney princesses, and just the fact that they were like, yes, we need men to save us. And then me as a little kid, I'm like, okay, I need a man to save me. And then just seeing how that like affected my life, because I think when you're so young, you're so perceptive to these things, and you just really idolize who you see on the screen.
The funny thing is, Disney is now making movies that acknowledge its own reputation for that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good thing. But yeah, definitely little Ella was like so, I looked up to these princesses and like because they were so cool.
What are some of the most meaningful responses to your films that you've received?
That's a really great question. So I think some of the most prominent are for my film Bubblegum, because that was about LGBTQ awareness and a girl who thinks she might like girls, but she identifies as straight. And I've had a lot of people either comment or DM me saying that somehow that film helped them come to terms with their own sexuality, or maybe like within them coming out to their parents or the people in their life. It allowed people to see themselves on the screen and see a part of themselves that I think is so easy to push down because it's been shamed for so long.
Let's take a short break.
Somehow, if my storytelling is able to inspire other people to tell their stories, and that's just the most important thing. Like, we all need to be telling our stories and we all need to be listening to each other's stories.
Oh, I love that so much.
Oh.
When and how did you realize that filmmaking and storytelling could also be activism?
I have not always realized how big of an impact it has on society and an emotional impact. But I think that seeing stories firsthand, like through movies, movies are the best way to see someone's very personal experience. You see the character going through these things. We've talked about this before, but there's one film, I believe it's called Love Is All You Need, and it's about the reversed sexuality. I saw that film and I was like, oh my goodness, like this totally changed my perspective on everything. Oh my gosh, like maybe I can do that too. So then, I did it and I made a film. I made the film Stereo, where it was reverse gender stereotypes. So it was kind of similar but a different topic. And then I saw that like my filmmaking was able to change other people's perspectives too, and it's such a ripple effect, and I think it's so powerful. And yeah, it started with me watching a film that influenced me, and then it led me to want to make a film to influence other people. Because it has such a strong emotional grasp, I think it's an amazing thing to use for activism.
What would you recommend any other movies or stories in general that touch on social justice issues?
A lot of the work by Ava DuVernay.
I get the hint that there are people making films who kind of feel like you just can't do fiction about those things, but you do it, I do it.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think that it can be easy to shy away from things that seem too political. Like I think a lot of people are just kind of scared to get involved in it. It's important to make political statements through fiction too, because it makes it more enjoyable for people. Not always, but I think people enjoy, a story and enjoy fiction and enjoy seeing these topics in a more like entertainment base. So they both have their pros and cons, I think.
So, what are your dreams for a potential career as a filmmaker?
I mean, the ultimate dream is just really to be able to keep making movies like as a career though. It's interesting because I don't really know exactly where I'll end up, none of us do, but I mean, just the ultimate goal is to be directing movies and to be in the industry in that way somehow.
How would you feel about directing and writing for TV in addition to movies?
I'm totally open to it. I am ready, whatever life shows me, whatever path it wants me to go down, whatever opportunities arise, I'm so willing to take these opportunities. Like I just don't know what's gonna happen, but I would totally be open to TV.
We'll be right back.
our generation is so accepting and so open and so willing to educate and to learn. And I think that that reflects in our filmmaking. You know, we're making films about the things that we see and the things that can't be ignored and the things we feel passionate about.
How might you like to integrate your work as a filmmaker with your work speaking out for social justice causes?
I think it kind of touches on what we said earlier, how a lot of these things being talked about are just through documentaries or through something that is just about that social justice topic. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think for me, I'm really aiming to be telling stories and sharing these topics in a way that's digestible and also can be enjoyable to watch while still informative, and still, you know, talking about something that's important. Because I think if we can integrate these things in our day-to-day digestion of entertainment, I think that will be a huge part of rewiring our brains and rewiring the brains of future generations to not have these prejudices or to think of things a certain way, because we just need to be integrating it in everyday things, and we don't want it to be something scary that people want to turn away from.
As we have talked about, your activism is art and your art is activism. The lines between the two are really blurred.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about one of your films, Voices, because Voices is a film made by a teenage girl about a teenage girl who is making a film.
Yes, it is. I think that's a perfect example of me reflecting myself in my movies.
I too have seen a lot of that in my own writing work and storytelling. Like sometimes the story of what's really happening to me and the story I'm telling as fiction, but everything has to be inspired by something. Who inspires you?
I mean, I have a whole list of women directors that come to mind because I think like it's so powerful because it's a position of leadership, and I think that that's something that was so looked down upon. Some that come to mind: Greta Gerwig, Mario Heller, Lulu Wang. I don't have the entire list off the top of my head, but those are just a few. And I listen to everything that they say and I watch all their interviews just because it's so inspiring, because they're doing it. So that means I can do it. It's like they're paving the way.
You have a very large following. Does your following impact your work, your life, your activism? You know you can reach people. You know you are what people have grown to call an influencer.
First of all, knowing that I have these people who will listen and these people who I have the potential to impact, that just kind of, it filters into my yearning for being an activist, because I know that I have some kind of influence on these people. So really be doing a disservice not to do something with the platform. But also, that being said, I think that having this sort of expectation, especially for art, like art is so vulnerable and it's so unpredictable, I've found. So it's difficult to, I don't know, it's this expectation. So I think it makes it more nerve-wracking for me to be making art. And it's because I know that it's going to be viewed by people's eyeballs. Yeah. So it's scary. It makes me nervous. But, you know, I'm so grateful for it at the end of the day. And I'm so grateful that I can have any kind of impact on anybody in a positive way.
Now for a quick break.
One other thing I try and do is help people to be a part of something, because I think that's really important within building a sense of community. So one thing, for example, is I asked my followers things they do for self-care. I had them write it on a little paper, and then I put them all compiled into a film. And just, I think for them to like see like their handwriting on the screen and see all of these other people who wrote things for the film, I think that was super beneficial. And in my film Bloom as well, I wanted to give sexual assault survivors a chance to be included in it. So I had people who have had instances of that record a voiceover for the final line, which says, "It's not your fault." So I try my very, very best to create opportunities for people to just, even if it's something small, just to be a part of a greater good or a greater project.
And in your film Bloom, are some of these sexual assault survivors heard on voiceover at the end people you hardly even know who just want to be a part of this?
Very, very vast majority of them, because I just posted it on Instagram. I said, hey, if anyone's dealt with this and wants to be part of this, then, you know, just DM me and we can chat and send a voiceover. And yeah, most of these people I don't even know, or I've never really talked to before, but it's a beautiful interaction between strangers.
Have you ever met somebody who you were just really inspired by?
Well, the first person that comes to mind is one of my best friends, actually. Her name is Erin. Shout out to Erin. But she's so curious and she asks really, really inquisitive questions, and just her outlook on life like inspires me so much, probably more than she realizes. But just with that and within my friends and all of their ideologies that they have and their perspectives on the world as well.
Do you feel like you have a very diverse space of friends?
Yeah, I definitely do. And, especially being in LA, like I'm constantly surrounded by diversity and people with different perspectives and different experiences. And I think that I'm in a really, really great place to have experience with that.
Do you have a favorite film of yours?
Favorite film of mine?
Yes.
I think I always go back to Bubblegum just because shooting that was literally the best weekend of my entire life. So I just have such great memories associated with it.
How do people in general react when they hear, oh, this person is telling a story that needs some amplification because it calls attention to a prevalent injustice in our society? I want to be part of this. How does that manifest itself?
I think the fact that films like these are able to have like an emotional influence on people, I think it makes it feel as if we're friends in a way. Like the film is their friend. Maybe if it's not even me specifically, like Bubblegum is a friend to someone who's nervous to come out to their family. And it can be like this confidant for them, and it can be their friend, and it can aid them through the ways.
Could you please take a few minutes to tell anyone who might be listening any advice that you can give them for making their voice heard and making a change?
Yes, of course. I feel like there's so much I could say, but I think with art specifically, there are so many mediums that can evoke so many different emotions within people. And we are young and we have so much time to just experiment. So I would just say do things. Don't worry if it's terrible, but just do things and try things and find out what resonates with you and maybe what doesn't, or what has an impact on you or your family or your friends or your circle. Like there's so much out there to do and so much to experience and so much to create. So I would say just take every opportunity that resonates with you and that you feel passionate about, and take like advantage of every resource that you have, and just make things and practice, and just it's a process of trial and error, but there's nothing wrong with the error.
Just don't keep quiet.
Yeah, we all have voices, every single one of us, so we can use them in so many different ways, and it's important to find the way in which your voice is the loudest.
Thanks, Ella, for participating on the show tonight. I enjoyed having you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for thinking of me to be on this, and I'm just so glad to be a part of it.
You're so welcome. Bye.
Bye, Leo.
That was an amazing interview. Ella is as good of a storyteller in conversation as she is behind the camera, and she knows that the process is just as important as the result. I loved what she said about that Where the Wild Things Are short film she made in middle school. How she said that if life's not a challenge, what is it for? We may not want to do the hard things in life, but the hard things in life are usually the important things. Think about that. I also love how Ella directly engages her supporters and followers in her storytelling, especially the way she invited them to do a voiceover for her film. She called it a beautiful interaction between strangers. I believe that little moments like these can go a long way. She's such an inspiring person all around, and all her films are just so good. You can find them on her YouTube channel, Ella Films. If you'd like to recommend someone you know who is trying to make a difference to be on the show, or if you are someone trying to make a difference who'd like to be on the show, email us at generationchange@leofinelli.com. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GenChangeWithLF. That's at GenChangeWithLF. Subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts, and just share this with your friends and others. Thank you so much for listening.